Kim Barker, let me just start off by asking you, you are presumably at the tail end of your publicity swirl for Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, which is the movie based on your book, The Taliban Shuffle.
Right.
Well, how does it feel? How has the ride been?
I mean, it's kind of been exhausting. It's amazing, that it happened, and, Tina was really kind to me, and everybody with the movie was really kind to me. The real roller coaster was in March here when I was, going to the premiere and doing all this TV with Tina here and staying in the Four Seasons. And I have to admit, when after a week at the Four Seasons, because apparently Brooklyn was too far for them to go to get me, and said they needed me in Manhattan. And I have to admit, when I was dropped off, back in Brooklyn after the sort of week of really heavy publicity, I kind of felt a little bit like, oh, geez, I'm going back to my normal apartment and my normal life. But, it's definitely strange being on the other side of, the Notebook and having folks interview me. And it's been nice getting back to work and getting back into doing stories and the projects that I'm working on. And, it's like nobody in the States seems to really research who's interviewing them. So it's not like it's been any deal with my job or anything like that.
Has it whetted your appetite to do more films, or is this the one and that's it?
Well, that's a really good question. I keep talking to folks about what I want to do, and I guess it comes down to the fact that I have a great job right now. I'm not just saying that because it's paying the bills. It's I'm getting to do investigative reporting in New York City, and there's just so many things you could write about here. And for right now, I'm totally happy just continuing to do this. And doing things on the side, figuring out, I'm trying to work on a sitcom on the side, a pilot to see if I can, pull that off. Because I do like trying to write funny. And there's not a lot of opportunity to do that with investigative reporting, believe it or not.
And your current position is that you are a Metro investigative reporter for the New York Times. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what I am.
And you were formerly with the Chicago Tribune, where you wrote Taliban Shuffle.
Yeah, well, I wrote it after I quit the Tribune. Yeah.
Okay, well, Kim, just to try to kick off the interview in a slightly novel way, can you give us your review of the film?
It was God, can you imagine me watching it for the first time? I hadn't even read the script. It's different than the book, and there's a lot of stuff in there that's, it's sort of fictionalized. They've made me a TV reporter, whereas in real life I'm a newspaper reporter. They've made me, to be super brave, running towards explosions and ignoring the advice of, my translator and the military. And in real life, I was more of a chicken and would run away from explosions because I like to live. And also, would follow the advice and the direction of my translator and of the military because I also would like them to live. So, there were those changes, but I think overall, I like to say that the film is truthy. It's definitely captured the narrative arc that's in the book, and I think tries to be very respectful to the military and to the relationship that I had with my translator, which in my opinion is the most important relationship in the book. The movie also has me romantically involved with a guy who in real life is just a really good friend. But, it's I knew all of that would happen. It's Hollywood. They're going to fictionalize things. So, overall, happy with it. But I think the book's much better, obviously.
I'm just keen to know how readily you accepted the process of adaptation and the huge amount of amalgamation and fictionalization that were necessary to turn the book into a film. Was this something that you were awkward with at all, or did you readily accept it?
Oh, hell, man, I'm a newspaper reporter. I readily accepted it. I'm not, I'm not John Grisham. I'm not some best-selling author. I'm not somebody who has any pull whatsoever with Hollywood. And I've had enough friends who've been in this situation, and their advice was, look, just basically drive the book to the border of California, drop it, turn around, and go back to your job. Let them do what they do. And that's basically what I did. I just, it's like I'm not such a prima donna that I'm going to sit there and say, oh, they've got to be true to the story. They've got to do this. It's got to be like a documentary. I trusted Tina Fey, and that, her team would want to do right by the story. And like, I don't have any experience doing any of that stuff, and I have a job that like I would rather be doing than trying to do that. So I accepted it readily. Fine, give me money. Fine.
Were there any compromises that you were unhappy with?
I'm a newspaper reporter. Obviously, I'd rather the reporter be with newspapers than TV, but like, I understand why they did that. And I understand why they made it a romantic relationship, even though in real life it wasn't. So there's nothing I can really say that I was unhappy with.
I'm eager to know what you thought about the need to change the main character from being a print journalist to being a TV reporter, and if that says anything about the shift in the media landscape today.
Well, I think it makes sense in light of the way that they're making this visual thing, and like, it's not that exciting to watch me on deadline. I'm typing. It's not that exciting. And to do the work of a TV person, it's more visceral. You've got to get everything on the camera. So it explains more about why she's going to be running towards an explosion and why she, goes into situations she shouldn't, because she needs the video. It's just like photographers. They can't be like me. I can sit on the sidelines and I can, if something's too dangerous, I don't have to be in the middle of it. I can make phone calls. So I understand for like a movie why you would need to do that. And as far as it being a reflection on the industry, whatever. Hollywood, like, it's Hollywood, right? So they need to do something that's like quicker, and makes more sense visually. And I think, I get why they did the TV thing.
Now, there is a lot of talk about gender imbalance in Hollywood at the moment. Was there a degree of self-consciousness while making this film that it was a woman's story, starring a woman and being told by a woman? Was that front of mind, or were you just making a movie?
Well, see, I wasn't that involved in like the day-to-day of what they were doing. I mean, I didn't even read the script I didn't ever read the script. I didn't even see the movie until February, and I was out on set for like a couple days last year when they were filming, and I'd met with Tina, but, it's not like I didn't go about thinking about like all that stuff, but of course it's in the back of your mind. It's like, I wrote a book, I'm a woman. Tina wanted to make it because she thought it was an interesting story about women that you don't see every day. And then, like, she produced it and, like, and not only that, it's a strong female role for Margot, and it's a movie essentially about women, who are competing in a profession. And I think that's such a rare thing to have. It's always usually about women competing over a man. And ending in some sort of marriage and a baby. And that is one thing that I had said to them. I'm like, if this movie ends with like my character being married, I will want to punch this movie, because I feel like there should be more adventure roles for women than just eat, pray, love. And that's a fine adventure role, but it's like you don't have to like find love at the end of your adventure. You can also just sort of decide that was an adventure and it's time to come home and live a more normal life. And, it's like the thing with Tina is every single, appearance she did in connection to the movie, she always mentioned me by name and the name of the book, the original name of the book by name. And I just don't know a lot of people in Hollywood who would do that for the author. It's like I didn't know that The Revenant was actually based on a book for months, because you never necessarily saw that in any of the sort of publicity for it. But Tina always, she was very kind to me and very, I think, generous, and always giving me credit for writing the original book.
Why did you never read the script?
Because I was told I had no control over it. If somebody sends you something, they say, you got no control over this, why sweat it,
Fair enough. Now, unless I missed something, this is not an overtly political film. Now, we have had some great films about the war: Hurt Locker, Lone Survivor, Zero Dark 30, American Sniper, and the last two of those films were very political. Did you work hard to keep politics out of the film, or did you have like a pre-production meeting about the political content of the movie?
No, I mean, again, I had no control over the film because I'm just the writer. It just doesn't matter. And I think the book is political, most definitely. And I mean, I guess like definitely in the folks in relation to the movie have said that they deliberately did not want to make a political movie. But I still think there are political elements to it. I mean, it's most definitely about the futility of this war in Afghanistan and how it's the forgotten war. It's sort of drilled in time and time again. And the whole idea that, like, we can always leave, the Americans can always leave. And, like, people like, Fahim, the character in the movie, are left behind. So I do think that there are political points to the movie. But it is in essence a small movie about about this group of people who are thrown into this war zone.
There's a very moving tribute in the film where your character visits a wounded soldier, and it does reflect something, Kim, that we've seen in other films, and that is the common soldier's selfless dedication to duty. Given your experience, what is your understanding of that?
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is I don't know if the end of it comes across like that. It seems to me like I did like some of the quotes from the soldiers who are just like, or not soldiers, the Marines in the movie, and how they were just like, it did seem like, the idea of how they were talking about the forgotten war, really rang true to me. But in my real interactions with Ben Crowley, the guy who did lose a leg, he blamed the Army for it, and at the same time, he did join to perform a duty. And I think that, like many folks it's a volunteer force here. And the fact is that they're signing up to do something that a lot of people wouldn't. And I think that, you have to, when you're putting yourself in that sort of risk and you're putting yourself in that sort of situation, see it somehow as something higher than just yourself. Like you're doing something that's just more than just about you.
Has the book enjoyed a nice sales spike because of the movie?
Yeah, totally. I got to thank Tina Fey for that. I mean, it's because she just keeps mentioning me all the time. So, yeah, totally.
And has it matched the original sales graph?
Oh, come on. The original sales graph was like, I think I sold what was it? In almost 5 years, I think I sold 11,000 copies, which is no sales graph whatsoever. I mean, I got all these great reviews, but it's not like the book company put any publicity behind it. And, I think that for most people, the idea of, oh, I want to read a dark comedy about the war on terror, that sounds great. That sounds exactly what I want to read. No, that's not what they wanted to read. But since like news of the movie came out, and since all the publicity, I think it's sold something like 48,000 copies, something like that. So, in other words, it's doing much better than it ever did the first time around.
One of the reasons why we love Americans is because of how eager they are to adapt books into films. And we've heard a lot about how publishers and literary agents will push a book for a movie sale even before it's published. Just quickly, what was the story with your book being turned into a film?
That did not happen to me. I was really lucky in that the New York Times reviewer, Michiko Kakatani, wrote a review of the book that was really glowing, and she had said in the review that I created a Tina Fey-like character. So Tina saw that, some people got it to Tina, and within 2 weeks of that review coming out, she'd read the book and optioned it, and pushed Lorne Michaels to be her co-producer on it, and Paramount to do the movie. So it happened really quickly, but it was all sort of like luck, all happenstance.
Like Spotlight, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot plays like a period film about a type of journalism that seems to be dying. Even the Chicago Tribune no longer has a war correspondent. Do you feel that certain parts of the profession are, in fact, dying out?
No, not yet. I mean, it's certainly much more diffuse. It's like you have so many options of where you can get your news today. And I think it's a lot more driven by, that story looks interesting, or my friend posted this story, and it's a lot more driven through social media than it ever has been. It's not like people dive into the New York Times now and read every single story in there. That said, I think that, like, we're doing great journalism still, and, I see a lot of other outlets like BuzzFeed doing great journalism, nonprofit outlets like ProPublica doing great journalism. It's just, like, all changing, and we're still trying to figure out how everything's going to get sorted. But, the opportunity to do things with big data and, crowdsource things, you've just never had opportunities to find people that can illustrate your stories like you have right now. So, I have to be optimistic about it, because after all, I'm clinging to this, sinking ship as long as I possibly can.
Being in a war zone, what was it like the very first time you realised there was somebody a few hundred yards away trying to kill you?
Oh, nobody ever shot at me. Okay. Nobody ever shot at me as far as I know. Maybe they were really bad aims, But no, I never, that's in the movie and the whole idea of being in a firefight. But, things aren't necessarily that dramatic all the time when you're in a war zone. I think the way that war is portrayed in, Hollywood movies, it's always like this constant, bang, 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 and life and death situation. Whereas it's really often, rarely like that. And, people continue to have lives and during war, and they continue to laugh during war, and, and that's very much what I show in the book.
Perhaps I should have asked the question, Kim, were you ever actually shot at while you were overseas?
I might have been shot at one time. I think, before my going away party, there was definitely shots being fired, but it wasn't like they were intended for me personally.